Adam. So, is professional advice worth the fee? Can transparency be a competitive advantage?
Is is professional advice worth the fee? That is a loaded question, Lex. I'm sure that people are thinking to themselves, that's an interesting question for sure. I think that professional advice is absolutely worth the fee if a consumer can quantify, number one, what value they've specifically gotten that's measurable, or probably more importantly, number two, they have confidence that they've got the right team to help them make the right decisions when the time comes, right? That loyalty has enormous value. Someone who knows you, knows what you care about, knows your preferences, knows your history, can help you make decisions. That is invaluable. And I think what's been really interesting over time is we have definitely seen a general distrust of the, let's say, less transparent or hidden fees associated with the financial services business, right? How do banks make money? How do insurance companies make money? Like we don't necessarily understand that as consumers. They're obviously doing well, right? Their stock value is growing and so forth. So they're making their money somehow. We don't understand how we contribute to that often because it's embedded in a black box. So I understand there's general distrust around where's the hidden fees. And I think it's driving a lot of younger consumers who are digitally enabled to go to very transparent platforms that have a very explicit fee that, there's no trading costs and so forth. Products like Robinhood and otherwise. By the way, they monetize just fine behind the scenes. They have an enormous number of hidden fees. You just would never see them because they've decided to say it's low cost, right? So the reality is that whenever there's money handling or money movement, there are different middlemen throughout the entire process that are getting paid for executing these transactions that we will never really understand. And for the most part, I think as consumers, we have to accept that the system and infrastructure exists because there are these grease skids between them. That being said, I think the real question of whether advice is worth the fee is a value conversation. And one of the things that we are seeing across the board in my own travels in the advice community is how can a professional advisor, number one, quantify what the fee is going to provide? And number two, how do I make that as comparable to something that is a standard? In other words, one of the things that we have seen is that about 15 or so years ago, there was a mass movement of asset management towards this classic 1% no trading costs, one all-in fee, 1% of the accounts under management. And it became a standard and everybody adopted it over the next 10 years or so. And now you're starting to see price compression at volume and scale so that as you have larger and larger accounts or amounts of money with an advisor, you can achieve marginal utility. In other words, lower effective costs, which makes sense, right? But the question is, what is that fee really going to? Is it going to all asset management? Is it going to execution? Is it going to financial planning? Is it going to tax advice? Or are those all separate components of the fee? And I think advisors would do really well by explaining in their business as well as to their customers what that fee is going to. There's no question that the asset management, investment management component of the business of financial advice has really dominated almost all of the wealth managers out there. It's the most productive, best asset as a business to keep on the books for the long term, as the best marginal utility, marginal revenue, especially if you can keep a client for 7, 10, 15 years. You can imagine the lifetime value of a client is highly expanded if you're managing assets on a recurring fee basis. So it's not surprising to see all the private equities and different investment companies that are getting into this space and say, hey, this is a great business. That said, what are the customers actually getting for this? And are we allocating a portion of that fee towards, let's say, advisory or planning services or ancillary concierge services, right? Helping people with budgeting or actually making financial decisions on the daily. Then you're going to see much more awareness that we have to expand the value proposition of professional advice to include disparate professions. In other words, legal, tax, insurance, investment banking, debt, credit, as well as alternatives, as well as budgeting, and even behavioral finance when we're not in the room with you. What are you doing to actually manage your finances to make better decisions? You're going to see this expansion, and it's going to have to be bundled into this fee that people are paying. So I think it's going to evolve a lot. But what professionals can do is do two things. Number one, help the customer understand what they're paying for. And two, try to quantify that in the form of action, not necessarily in results. It's really difficult to say, I'm going to earn you an extra 1, 2, 3% a year because you're working with me. That's not necessarily deliverable. I'm definitely going to save you taxes. Maybe, maybe not. I'm definitely going to save you from making bad investment decisions. I don't know what all those are worth. So we really have to help the client understand where the fee is going and why, and how it specifically will help them create a better probability of success in the future.